Welcome to What Are You Noticing with Kish and Mitra. My co host is Kish. She is a coach, relatefulness facilitator, and improv teacher.
My co-host is Mitra. He is a Dharma teacher, relatefulness facilitator, and coach. In this podcast, we're going to be covering a wide range of topics such as
Relationships,
insights from coaching and facilitation,
spirituality,
living a good life,
Asian American life,
and what's happening for us on our spiritual journeys. Without any further ado, we hope you enjoy the episode. So we were just chatting before this about what we want to talk about today.
Yep. Topic around like how to become yourself and I like the idea of like finding your voice. So like a lot of times artists copy other artists in the beginning, and then through that process they learn to find their unique voice, and then that's really where the gold is. That they almost have to like go through that awkward period of like not knowing it and being inspired by other people and just like trying things out to see what actually fits.
Mm-hmm. And then also another part of that, and I think even we as normal people, non-artists can relate to, is you try to be someone else and then you get a certain reception for that, and you're afraid that if you are really yourself and you drop that act or mask or whatever, that you won't have that same reception. Like you won't be liked anymore, you won't be accepted.
Totally. Yeah. I'm also thinking about like growing up and being often one of the only Asian people in the room, or maybe the only one, and then being like, I'm gonna try to fit in and just minimize the difference and try to like blend in, but that in a weird way doesn't. What's happening for you?
It's just bringing up like when I was a teenager, and it's not something that I really feel that much anymore. I don't even know if I've shared this with you, but when I was a teenager, I remember all I wanted was to be white. It was like, I wish I had white parents. I wish I could just be white.
Totally.
White is like normal.
Yeah, I don't know if this happened in your family, but I remember my parents talking and just normal like Korean families talking, and there was some subtle code of like doing white things is good, and then they like talk very negatively about like other minorities and be like, that's like their culture stuff. Don't do that. Do the white thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like the latter.
Yeah. And there's also this other weird phenomenon. I remember reading this book about this North African black man that grew up in like a French culture, and the shock he had of looking in the mirror and seeing an African face. And then it reminded me when I was a teenager. I remember once looking in a mirror and being surprised that I had like an Asian face and being like, oh, I actually expected a white person for some reason.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting now that times have changed since both of us were younger, and even cuisine. Like there's way
Yeah,
more
right.
Asian food options in the mainstream, and like, you know, you're Korean, there's like
Everyone
the
loves kimchi.
Korean culture. Yeah, everyone loves kimchi, everyone loves K-pop, and I think it gives us an opportunity to find more acceptance.
It's an interesting question that I'm navigating. Like, how do I own who I am, like all of my parts? And I remember I even asked ChatGPT. I was like, how do I own my heritage? And it gave me 10 suggestions. And I hated some of them because some of them are like, go to cultural heritage events. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to like, I don't want to go to like lion dances or something. Like, but I want to,
Why don't you want to do that?
I have like no interest in that. I'm just like, I don't know.
I
It's
see.
not like connecting. I don't think I feel connected when I am doing that.
Yeah, I'm imagining there's something else that you want to be connected
Mm,
to that's not just the forms of the
mm.
traditions of the culture.
Yeah, I think what you're saying before about the K-pop and stuff, there's like, I would like my experience like the unique experience of being like a immigrant son or like Asian American to be included at the very least to myself when I'm with other people, and ideally also included in the people I'm with. And sometimes it can feel like, oh, this is like going to weird people out, or they're not going to be able to relate, or they don't know how to deal with this.
Mm,
That's the thought or
mhm.
projection I have in my head.
This is really interesting to me. I remember a couple weeks ago, I was in a relatefulness session and someone brought up, I won't say what it is, but someone brought up a kind of like a common
Mm-hmm.
trauma that people have. And it was the first time that I had heard that being brought up in a session. And it's something that I had experienced. And I just felt like, oh my God, what are all the ways
Mm-hmm.
that having experienced this shapes my
Mm-hmm.
experience in a way that is usually just invisible to
Mm-hmm.
me. And I feel like I don't know if it's like this for you, like what's not being
Mm-hmm.
included for you when that part of your identity isn't included. But for me, it's like I don't really know what it is
Mm-hmm.
until I see it. Like I don't know it's missing in most contexts until maybe I'm hanging out with a couple of Chinese American
Mm-hmm.
friends and there's just so much
Mm-hmm.
shared context.
Totally. Yeah, imagine like a fish in water. It's like hard to know what the water is.
Yeah,
I'm also
exactly.
thinking back to like when we used to circle at the monastery, and there were certain things I felt like with you and other Asian Americans, I could kind of like just like get it really quickly, and other people would have to take like 5 or 10 minutes, like trying to unpack, like why is this hard for you or something. And I'd be like, this totally makes sense. They feel like isolated and alone, and like this is completely normal. So there's like
Yeah.
there's something nice about like relating with people that already get the context. It just goes a lot faster and smoother. And
Is that like I'm thinking about the relationship to
Mhm.
yourself and then other people's relationship to
Mhm.
you? Is that like I wish that that part of me could be seen more excessively?
It's probably like a story that I think is partly has like external valid truth of like wanted to be seen, wish it wasn't so effortful, and I think there's like a strong sense I've been feeling a lot, and a lot of people I've coached or circled recently all have this thing around like wanting to feel a sense of belonging and the fear of getting exiled or pushed out, and feel that there's a greater sense of
Mm-hmm.
safety if the other person gets where I'm at and doesn't think it's weird or foreign.
Because if they thought it was weird or foreign, then it would be easier for them to other you.
Well, I have a principle that I think that a lot of people by default are really uncomfortable with either something they don't understand or they don't know what to do with. They don't
Mm,
have like a next step kind of answer or step to do, action to do. They get very uncomfortable. And
mm-hmm.
so, and of course, there's also like universal principles. I'm sure that like as I get older, the nice thing I'm realizing is I can share my unique story and then see how actually it connects usually with like universal themes for everyone. Whether it's like belonging or loving someone that doesn't like love you back or has trouble letting love in or something. Um, and so what used to
Mm,
feel like uniquely mine starts becoming like a universal human story.
that's interesting because it seems like you're going towards this more unique part of yourself and trying to accept it. But then in doing so, you see that like there is some uniqueness to it, but there's also this
Hmm.
universality. Everyone wants to have their context feel
Hmm.
seen. People want
Hmm.
ease.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This is reminding me of when I was, and I don't know, I mean, you're dating
I
now, so
am. I have a date this
maybe you could
afternoon.
speak to this. Oh,
Yeah,
really?
tea date.
Okay,
Mhm.
fun. When I was dating, like on the dating apps, it's so easy to
Mhm.
filter by what is their
Mhm.
ethnicity. And something that I was really interested in, although I wasn't just filtering for this, was I wanted to date someone with a similar cultural
Mhm.
background to
Mhm.
me. Like I wanted to find someone Chinese American who, they would just get
Hmm.
me. They could communicate with my parents because their English isn't so
Right.
good.
Right.
And like, that now I'm
Hmm.
with this Jewish American guy. And I think it's easy to be like, they're not going to understand me. They might try, but they're going to fall into
Hmm.
stereotypes, or they're just never going to really be able to understand because they didn't experience it
Hmm.
themselves. And I've been really surprised by how much, I mean, it takes longer, but one thing that's nice actually is that I might share things
Hmm.
with him, and he has a different
Hmm.
relationship to them because he didn't he doesn't have that firsthand experience. So like for instance, I feel terrible when I sleep too
Hmm.
much.
Okay. Guilty. Inner
Yeah.
critic. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, see, so you
Hmm.
get it. You
Hmm.
know exactly what
Hmm.
I'm talking about when I
Gotta
say
work.
it. But for him, he's just like, wake up, sleepy. Like, like, oh, you slept for a long time. Like, there's no shame in the way that he's
Right.
communicating with me. Like, he's not trying to shame me at all, which is very different from the internal
Mm,
experience.
nice. That's amazing. It's making
Yeah.
me realize, we started with like the early on, like the desire to like be white and fall into white
Hmm.
stereotypes or something, and now there's a weird way in which like the opposite, like the flip side of the coin, is like wanting an Asian person, so that there's this, like you're saying, this false belief that like an Asian person will get me better, and so I need to be with an Asian person, but now
Yeah.
it's actually blowing that up on the other side.
Yeah. I like that.
One of my favorite movies I saw recently was, I don't know if you saw this, was called Past Lives.
I
Love that
have,
movie.
yeah.
And it's so amazing because it's a question I've been thinking of like, she went to America, she married a Jewish guy, and it's like, she's kind of like you. And in a way, uh, I think I read it.
She's
She's really
cool.
cool. She's like awesome and beautiful and like intelligent and like successful. But I remember I read an
Thanks,
interview.
Mitra.
I read an interview with the director writer, and she was like, that actually happened to her in real life, and it was like,
Oh,
it
wow.
was interesting because she was like, it's actually kind of a story of identity, of like there's the part of her that like she left behind in Korea, and there's a part of the soul or something that like kind of pines for that, but also kind of like let that go, and it's like, this is the life I chose, and like this is the life I have, and it's like good. And there's like another thing that I would like to have, but it's not, can't necessarily have everything. And so it's like, I just like chose this person, I chose this life, and like that's good.
Yeah.
I think I feel that way because growing up, a lot of like my brother's 5 years older than me, and a lot of his generation and him all would go back to Korea or Asia to like spend a few years in their 20s to like reconnect and
Mm.
get the heritage and all. And then almost everyone in my generation didn't do that. And it was like an interesting, I don't know why it fell that way generationally, but there's this thing of like one group really tried to recover something, and another group really just made their American life and kind of accepted that. I don't think there's like a better
Mm.
or worse, but there is like a different choices.
Yeah. Was your brother born in Korea?
He was, yeah. He had moved. He migrated when he was like 5. Yeah, so he had a little bit
Okay.
more memory.
Yeah. One summer before my senior year of college, I got some funding from the university to work on my theater
Mm,
thesis. And I don't know if you know
mm.
this, but I think maybe you do, but I made a solo show. So I like
Oh,
wrote
wow.
it, I acted in it, and it was called The Girl Who Thinks Too Much and the People She Interviewed. I interviewed Asian Americans in
Huh.
SF and New
Huh.
York, New York City. I also traveled to China by
Mm.
myself and then went to my mom's
Wow.
hometown, like went to my grandpa's grave and stuff. And I was so interested in reconnecting with that part
Mm.
of me. It's interesting thinking about the like
Mm-hmm.
homeland or something, and I think it is a different experience to be somewhere where people
Mm.
like, China is really
Mm-hmm.
homogeneous.
Right.
Everyone is like
Everyone's
basically
Chinese.
everyone
Yeah,
there is
totally.
Chinese. Yeah. And that does give you a
Mm.
sense of
Mm-hmm.
belonging, but I think part of the challenge of
Mm.
being, Asian
Mm.
American is like neither at home there
Mm.
nor at home
Totally.
here
Totally.
fully. And there's this word
Mm.
exile, which, it's used to refer to people like exiles from
Mm.
countries. And then we also use it in
Mm-hmm.
parts work.
Right.
We have our own internal exiles, and like regardless of where we are, we can have a relationship with
Mm.
them. We could start to make a relationship with
Mm.
them.
Damn. I think I could feel one in my heart right now. That's amazing. Did you feel?
Don't try this at
Yeah.
home.
Hire one of us first. Did you feel like more deeply connected by going on that trip and being there?
I
Mm.
did, but it's not something that seems to have really lasted, at least in my perception over
Mm.
time. Memories
Mm.
fade. And I think one of the things I was really interested in when I was there was
Mm.
getting the stories of my
Mm.
family. And that was something that I did even
Mm.
when I wasn't in China. Like I would ask my
Wow.
parents stories about their
Mm.
lives.
That's really cool. It's also making me think about how important stories are. Almost like that's the inheritance or like the legacy often is held in wanting to know where I come from is like a story than almost almost as
Mm,
much or more so than like the physical place and like putting myself in
mm.
context into a story helps a lot.
Do you have that?
I have it in bits and pieces. I wish I had more. The last time I was home with my parents, I told them, because a lot of times when I go home, we talk about like the same topics about like when am I going to get a traditional job and like get married and when do I move back home and like gossip about friends and family. And I was just like,
Mhm.
I really don't like talking about this stuff, and I would really like to hear more stories about your life and where I came from.
Mm,
Ironically, I got it a lot from my brother who went to Korea and kind of like what you said, interviewed and talked to a lot of family members and got a lot of backstory. And there's this weird like I don't know if it's like karma or something or inheritance. I remember in college I switched my major to study religions and my dad saw one of the books I was reading and he was like, "Oh, I read that book in the original Chinese." And I was like, "What?" I was like,
mm,
"I'm reading it in like the English translation." And he was like, "Yeah, I took a whole course just on that one Taoist author." And I was like, "Oh." And so there's a weird way in which like almost feel like I'm reliving my dad's life without knowing it and like completing it in some way.
yeah,
It's really cool though. I didn't know you did that actually, the theater project and everything.
yeah, thanks. I feel really touched by that sh
Mm.
share, the reliving your dad's life without knowing
Hmm.
it.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Well, on New Year's Eve, a bunch of us went to have dinner at this person's house. We invited a bunch of neighbors. There was this one couple that had been married for like 25 years. And we like asked them, what's the secret to a long marriage like that? And
Mm,
and they were like, they had their ups and downs and almost got divorced and all that, but they said they stopped focusing on what they didn't like about each other and how they weren't living up to their expectations or were annoying them, and they instead focused on the needs that their partner was fulfilling and how nice that is.
mm,
And when they appreciated that, the partner also usually stopped doing the things that annoyed them, or at least did them less. There's a way
mm,
in which like I wish I'm trying to like own the parts of me that are frustrated with my upbringing and my parents, but also want to appreciate the positive things I got from them.
Yeah,
What's that bring up for you?
I've been thinking about this too because my relationship with my father, my parents are
Mm-hmm.
divorced. My relationship with my father has basically been strained for a long time. And I've had an on and off relationship with my mom, like sometimes being very
Mm-hmm.
close. And recently, like this past year, a little less than a year, but we have communicated extremely
Mm-hmm.
little. And I've been thinking a lot recently about my relationship with her. And I think part of the reason why, you know, I remember when I was younger, and I think a lot of kids,
Mm-hmm.
Asian American
Mm-hmm.
or not, feel this way. Like, I never want to be like my
Mm-hmm.
parents. They do this, this, this,
Mm-hmm.
this, and I'm not going to be that kind of parent. And then as you get older, you start to realize,
I
oh,
am.
I am like my parent.
Totally. Like, oh no.
And this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why it's so important to, like you were saying, see, oh, what are the needs that they did
Mm-hmm.
meet? And what are the ways that, I can still love them because those parts, I mean, this is true for
Mm-hmm.
everyone, but especially your
Mm-hmm.
parents. The parts that we hate
Mm-hmm.
about them are the parts that we hate about
Right.
us because they're in
Mm-hmm.
us. And you could start from the outside or start from the
Mm-hmm.
inside.
Totally. Yeah. It reminds me of I was in a like a really full flow with Bloss, and he was talking about how he's like parenting or like helping out some kid, and how like kind of
Yeah.
bitter he was
Yeah.
about how the kid's not like thanking him and being gracious, and it reminded him of how much love parents have for their kids, that they like inconvenience their lives to like pick them up from school and like make sure they have lunch and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's true.
Yeah.
So I could tap into that more.
Mm,
But also like the positive qualities, like I think I learned really hardworking, with some like shadow in there of like overworking maybe, but I learned to like be a hard worker and like have really good character and like ethics, and like be really prudent with money and stuff. Like the positive things
mhm.
I inherited from my family, not just the negative sides of that.
Yeah. I don't know which framework this is in, but I remember the person I was working with for some ancestral
Mm-hmm.
healing. She used the language of
Mm-hmm.
inheritance and burdens. So there's like these intergenerational gifts and intergenerational
Mm-hmm.
burdens or, traumas. And actually, I can't find this, but I saw this meme on Instagram a while ago that said just because your parents couldn't
Mm-hmm.
heal all of their intergenerational trauma doesn't mean that they didn't heal some of
I
it.
saw that. Yeah,
Oh,
saw
you
that.
saw
Yeah, that
that?
was good. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. It's funny because I do a lot of medicine work, and pretty much most of the clients almost always have some deep hurt kids in them that keep looking to their parents and wishing they were like the perfect parents. And it's so hard. It's so
Mm,
hard to like turn that around and be like, well, now you can reparent yourself and be with the kid that didn't get what they wanted from their mom or dad,
yeah.
and like provide that for oneself. And
Yeah. I think there's two
mhm,
approaches. There's that approach, which I think in a lot of our circles, that's the primary
mhm,
approach, where, if you're looking to someone else to fulfill a need of
mhm,
yours, then you can actually look to
mhm,
yourself to do that. And another approach that I'm learning more
mm.
about, the attachment theory
Oh yeah.
relationship approach, is basically you have these primary attachment
Mhm,
figures and primary attachment figure
mhm,
wounds, and basically anyone anyone in your life who becomes a primary attachment figure, such as a romantic
mm.
partner, they
Right.
then step into the place
Totally.
of all those people who wounded you in the past, and they can become a source of
Mm.
healing or resourcing for
Totally.
that.
Totally.
Why did you go like?
I was like, dang, that's a lot of pressure to put on the partner, but it was like cool. But
Some people would argue that's their
hmm
job.
okay. Well, I'm thinking about your partner having a completely different relationship to your sleep again. And I imagine that's like very healing and nice to be like, oh,
It
yeah.
is. Yeah, I do think that, probably ultimately you still have to learn how to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
But the people around you, especially the people who are really
hmm
influential to you, and this has happened for me with people like you, for example, and some of my other friends and
hmm
teachers. You teach me how to love
hmm
myself in ways that I don't know how to yet. Or you even highlight the ways that I'm
hmm
not loving myself that I could
mm,
be.
totally. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is like I think there's the meme of like, you can't love someone until you love yourself, but it seems like, I think it can go in both directions. Like someone could love someone and that helps them to learn how to love themselves.
And the thing that's coming up for me, I've thought about this
hmm
before, but it's coming up for me now, is there's
hmm
conditional love and then there's
hmm
unconditional love. And, we can love certain parts of ourselves and not
hmm
love all of the parts of
Totally.
ourselves. And sometimes it's easier to love it in others because there's a little bit more
hmm
distance and maybe we're ready for
hmm
that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the parts work
Yeah.
that I do, all of it's just person hating or wanting some part of themselves to go away, and then just being like, what if we acknowledge and appreciate that part for what it's doing for you? And then they're just like, oh, yeah, right. That's really nice. Yeah. I also had this thing with, I was hanging out with Sophia Jean yesterday, and she told me, she was like, you could probably teach like how to use mindfulness and like relational skills as being a good leader or running an organization. And it never really crossed my mind before. And then it was really vulnerable for me to ask, and I was like, "Do you think I was a good leader?" I was like, I don't know if I
Aww.
was." And she was like, "Yeah, you're a terrific leader," and it's so nice that yeah, sometimes getting reflections from other people in ways that like I can't see myself, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's really nice." I think the reparenting that I want from either like a primary caregiver or myself is like classic Tiger Mom one of like, why did you get an A minus? Why is this an A? It's always like, no matter how hard you try, there's a sense of like
Yeah.
you should be number one no matter what. And it's like I tried my best. I can't
Oh
do
my
better than that.
God. Yeah. This is really reminding me because it came up, like, it's been coming up for me in my
hmm
personal life, but then also one of my improv students yesterday, I was asking the class to reflect on the
Oh,
question, what gets in the way of you having
mm,
fun? Because fun is so
mm.
important in improv and
Really?
in
Oh,
our
okay.
lives, obviously.
I thought improv was about working, but okay. Oh,
Yeah, and also our lives are just
hmm
about working.
Totally.
And I appreciated this a
Mm,
lot. One of my students said,
mm,
comparison. I compare myself to others, and that really gets in the way of me
mm,
having fun. And I don't know if this was
mm,
appropriate or not, but I just
mm,
shared with her because this is like our
hmm
job. Like my job, not as an improv teacher, is like
mm,
coach and facilitator and being with
mm,
emotions and whatnot. And I shared with her probably what's at the root of the self comparison. And I see that a lot in like, I have to be the
mm,
best, like A plus, not A
hmm
minus, is this sense that external things are going to make me worthy.
mm. Right.
If I do this, then I can be
hmm
happy. How many people believe
hmm
that?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of, I remember a long time ago when we were at the center, there was a woman that was like a software developer at like some big, I don't know, like Fortune 100 company. And she just took like a week off to go to the meditation retreat. And I remember talking to her, and afterwards she was asking this question of like, my parents told me to chase after educational success and career success. And I've been in a lot of relationships, and like I had a lot of success, and I don't really know what do I base my identity on, or like what's the thing I should do. Kind of like you're saying, there's all these like external things that we're told are the thing, if we get, then we'll be happy or settled. And my answer at the time was like the classic Buddhist thing of like, well, the thing that no one can take from you until maybe you die, but even then probably not, is like a character. And so you want to train your character to be good, and so like be proud of oneself.
What's included in character?
I imagine something like being in integrity of one's values, feeling authentic to oneself. I imagine like inner harmony. My actions and speech and my life are congruent with what I want and what I think is good.
Yeah, this feels kind of like it's bringing us back to the topic from the
Mm.
beginning, which is showing up more fully in
Mhm.
yourself, finding your
Mhm.
voice, that being something that you can be proud of.
Mhm.
What happened with that woman, if you know?
I don't know. I never saw her again. I hope she's okay.
That's how it
Yeah,
goes.
let's try. But I mean, it kind of follows the thing of like, you just kind of copy things that people tell you to do, and then I think you just kind of figure out in your next best guess what's what actually fits, what's actually my voice.
I think the trying things out part is so important
Hmm.
because sometimes we have a sense that this is who we
Hmm.
are because it's just what our habit is, what we're accustomed
Hmm.
to. But it may require doing something that feels off
Hmm.
for a while to find an even greater
Mm.
authenticity.
Thanks for listening. This podcast was executive produced by Mitra and Kish, was written by Kish and Mitra, and performed by Mitra and Kish. Like, review, and subscribe wherever your podcasts are found.
For more information about Mitra, you can visit his website at peterxpark.com. And for more information about me, you can visit my website at kishandyou.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.